Cynghorydd Bob Murray.
Ydych chi eisiau testio'r cyfieithu
Dwi
gyntaf?
wedi testio.
O, ydych chi wedi, sori.
Da ni wedi testio. Diolch yn fawr. Felly ymddeiriadau gan Bob Murray, Peter Pendergast, rwy'n arall?
Graham Boyce, so mae Tony Ward yn sefyll i fewn dros fo.
Croeso Tony, croeso i chi ddod yma atan ni bore yma. Ag Declaration of Interest, datgan diddordeb? Neb, right. Materion BRYS gan y cadeirydd, Urgent Matters by myself. Dim byd gyda i, diolch yn fawr. Mae cawn ni mlaen at cofnodion y Pwyllgor dwytha. Trwyddo nhw i weld amgywirdeb. Tudalen 3. Tudalen 4. Tudalen 5. Tudalen 6. Tudalen 7. Tudalen 8. Tudalen 9. Tudalen 10. Tudalen 11. 12, a tudalen ola ydy tudalen 13. So un o fodlon cynnig bod nhw'n gywir, gwch yna. Diolch Peter, a seconded by Hugh, diolch yn fawr. Okay, matters arising. Tudalen 4, delivery of Ddinbych Housing and Homelessness Strategy. Cael ymlaen yn tudalen 5. Ac yn dod i ddiwedd yn tudalen 6. Library Service Standards and Performance. This was a very good report. Tudalen 7. And then we came to the last item, which took us a lot of time. Reduction of single-use plastics and carbon reduction in the school meals services. That was in front of Cabinet yesterday. No, Tuesday, I do apologise, dydd Mawrth dwytha. Oedd hi'n braf cael disgyblion ysgol Dinas Bran hefo ni yn doedd yn trafod y defnydd o blastig un tro. Ac roedd nhw'n gofyn cwestiynau dwys a chall iawn. Felly, da ni'n cael ymlaen.
Interpretation seems to have gone there, and Chair, there was nothing.
Yes, I'm not getting any interpretation, sorry, yeah. Yeah.
You hear me in English. You hear me in English, but not in Welsh. That's what you're saying. Yeah. Okay. Wel, peth yn iawn. Da ni'n siarad Cymraeg am chydig. I'll speak Welsh for a moment. Ydych pawb yn clywed ni? Can you hear us now? Diolch yn fawr iawn. Okay. Felly, mi gafwyd trafodaeth hirfaeth ar hwn, a mi welwch chi bod ni wedi rhoi cynigion o flaen y cabinet wrthos yma, a mae'n mynd drwedd. A wedyn, da ni drod dalen 12, Scrutiny Work Programme, and feedback from committee representatives. Dyna ni, ddim byd yn codi, dwi'n meddwl, so os gynnwch chi rhywbeth Rhian?
Na, mae'n wybodaeth ychwanegol ar chi ofyn amdano fo, mae hwnnw wedi cael ei gylchredeg atoch chi dechrau'r wythnos yn y ddogfen yna, ynglyn â'r carafanau ac be oedd y llall gwch yn rhywbeth arall. O ia, y defnydd o letu gwely a brecwast ynde. Mae gyd yn y ddogfen yna'r wybodaeth i chi.
Diolch yn fawr. Wel, da ni'n... Ia, gwneud i bleidleisio bod hyn yn gywir, os gwelwch yn dda, bod pawb yn hapus. Diolch yn fawr. Ar y sgrin, dwi'n bleidleisio ddwywaith. Oh, helo, Geraint, sy'n mai? Croeso. Dyna ni, diolch yn fawr. All passed, pawb yn cytun, diolch yn fawr. A da ni'n mynd mlaen nawr i'r beth nesaf. Item nesaf, staff absence and turnover figures for Ddinbych County Council during 21 and to 22, really, during the COVID period, really. Before I go into this, I must apologise. I'll have to leave the meeting about halfway through. I have to take my wife to see an assessment on her eyesight, and I've got a great deputy taking over here, Hugh Irving. So it gives me a chance to thank you all as chair of Scrutiny Performance, all officers, and also people from Cabinet who've come in front of us diolch yn fawr iawn I chi am eich cefnogaeth. And we are thinking, of course, of Hugh Jones Corwen, who was with us in the beginning of this, chairing this. That's why I'm in the chair. But it's been a great experience for me. Wedi bod yn brofiad arbennig I mi, a dwi wedi mwynhau yn arw iawn. Os ydych chi'n sefyll eto yn yr etholiad nesaf, gai ddymuno pob llwyddiant I chi, ac rhai sydd ddim, gai ddymuno ymddeoliad I chi cywir a cartrefol hefyd. A dwi yn ddiolchgar i'r staff, pobl fel Cath Jones, ond yr un sydd wedi cadw fi ar y llwybr cil ydy Rhian Evans. Mae hi'n anhepgor am ei gwaith mae wedi wneud ym mhob pwyllgor. So, chi roi dwylo efo'ch gilydd I Rhian a'r staff arall yn cynnwys cyfaill yn ochr I fama. Diolch yn fawr iawn I chi. Right, ymlaen ti nawr ydy galw ar Julian I roi'r adroddiad ger bron, ac wrth gwrs mae Gary Williams hefyd a Louise Dougal. Dwi'n nabod Louise rwan, nabod I gwynebu. Croeso I chi, tri.
I'm assuming, Chair, when you introduced Graham, you meant me, because I'm the one that's introducing it.
Yeah, sorry, Gary and Julian. Over to you. Sorry, Julian.
Thank you very much, Chair. I've been called worse, so don't worry. Yes, this is quite a wide-ranging report, and it covers a number of related areas. So I'm just going to give you some of the broad brushstrokes as an introduction. But as you say, I'm more than ably supported by Louise and Gary, who will be taking you through some of the detail. The report really is in almost three sections. So the first one deals with staff absence, and the detail is broken down in Appendix 1 in terms of a lot of the data. And I'm not going to go into that myself. I'm sure that we can pick that up later. Pre-COVID, as you can see from the report, we were actually the best performing authority in Wales in terms of our absence rates. In the first year of the pandemic, 2021, for understandable reasons, everybody was, most people were working from home and socially distancing. It actually reduced again in terms of that. We've seen in 21-22 an increase, which again is probably not that unanticipated, and we would anticipate a figure probably by the end of this year, somewhere in the region of an average of 9 days absence. There is still some consistency in terms of the reasons for absence. The three largest areas of reason for absence pre-COVID are still the same ones. Those are musculoskeletal, depression and anxiety, and personal stress. But of course, over the last couple of years, COVID has come in as a new reason for absence. The table in section 4.15 breaks down by service area, and again, there's nothing particularly that I'm sure that any of you would have found as unanticipated in that. The frontline services, community support services, education, highways, planning, etc., are the ones that have the highest rates of absence. So if I turn to staff turnover, which was the second area you wanted us to cover, again, the table in section 4.7 shows that in terms of our turnover figures in comparison with other local authorities in Wales, again, we are below the Welsh average, and we continue to maintain that level of below that the Welsh average. However, there are some pockets that we're clearly aware of where there have been some significant issues. There's some areas, Tony sitting here today in Tony's service, where we do have quite a high churn, and also turning on to the next section, have difficulty recruiting to. Similarly, in Emlyn's service, And of course, we know the situation in terms of social care as well. Over the last 2 years, the sort of two main areas of leavers, I suppose you could say. The largest group are those on grade 4 and below, and the predominant reason for leaving in that category are for personal reasons, which you probably expect. And also in the grade 10 and above, where people perhaps have reevaluated where their position is and are looking more towards retirement. So that probably moves us on to the third plank in the report, which is in terms of recruitment and retention, and also the corporate workforce plan. I'd like to just mention as well. Appendix 2 to your report is the draft corporate workplace plan. This has been brought together. Each of the individual service areas have created their own service workforce plan, and those have all been collated together into one draft corporate plan. And following on from that, a delivery plan has been developed, which is also contained in your packs in Appendix 3. I suppose I have to say that, as with all public sector employers, we are having difficulties in recruiting in a variety of areas. Some of them, to technical posts where the private sector pays more than the public sector. Some of them, as I touched on my last point, in things like catering and cleaning, where it has proven very difficult to actually recruit staff. Again, this isn't something that we're facing in isolation. All of our public sector colleagues are facing the similar sorts of situations. And in fact, although in different areas, the private sector is also facing issues, particularly in things like we've seen in the press about hospitality. Of course, all during the pandemic, everybody was going on about, got to keep the hospitality, and now everything's reopened. They can't actually get staff. And I think that probably does underline one of the points that the COVID has changed many people's ideas of how they want to work and where they want to work, and it's sort of driven a change in that, and we will have to accommodate it accordingly as an employer. So I suppose just to summarise in my wrap up before I hand over to Louise and Gary, I think over the last 2 years the workforce have proven, absolutely excellent. They've been resilient under the worst possible sets of circumstance that certainly anybody's faced in living memory in local government probably. The services have continued to deliver, even though we've had people deployed for large parts of time in different areas totally to support other areas. There hasn't been a significant impact in terms of service delivery. Yes, there are pockets which are experiencing some real challenges. And moving forward, I think the workplace plan delivery will support our recruitment and retention concerns. But again, I suppose the point I raised a few minutes ago was about the fact that this is a market issue. It's not just necessarily, it's not a Ddinbych issue solely. And I think that's probably the main thing I hope you can take out of the reports, and I know you'll have lots of questions, I'm sure, is that, the issues that we're facing are not issues that Ddinbych is making, so to speak. It's not that staff are leaving because they all hate Ddinbych or anything along those lines. It is a sector-wide issue that we're facing where we're facing them. So as an introduction, that's all I wanted to say. So I'll hand over to Louise now, please.
Okay, I don't think I've got anything further to add there. You've covered all the main points I was going to cover. Quite happy to take any questions from anybody.
Gary, ydych chi eisiau deud rhywbeth?
Diolch, Mr. Cadeirydd. Yes, just really echo the fact that, as ever, Julian's given an excellent introduction and covered all of the main aspects of the report. I think there are two messages that out of this to me is, first of all, we have an excellent workforce who have been responsive, been diligent, been devoted to the delivery of service through what has been a historically challenging time for us in terms of the pandemic. I think the second thing is that the issues that we face are issues that are common to all local authorities and indeed actually to most employers. I think in terms of absence, as Julian said, we were the lowest absence rate in Welsh local authorities pre-pandemic. And you can see from the table at paragraph 4.2 that we've consistently performed below the Welsh average. The dip in 2020-21 to even lower figures was not just us. Everybody had lower figures, and that's predominantly because social distancing, people being restricted in their movements and their contacts meant it wasn't just COVID that they weren't catching anything else either that they would usually catch from other people. And as well, you know, if you were feeling under the weather, etc., working from home, you were probably still able to work because you weren't bringing something in that you were going to give to your colleagues or pass through the workforce. In terms of the increase that we're experiencing now, again, anecdotally, we understand that that's an increase that everybody, certainly regionally, is experiencing. There are a number of factors to that. We've got the fact that now that people are mixing again, they are picking up the sorts of common infections that human beings transmit between each other because there's just more contact. The other thing that we have to remember as well is, which is partly an explanation for the dip in numbers in 2020-21 and the increase now, is that lots of elective pre-planned treatments in hospitals were delayed due to the pandemic for obviously understandable reasons. So people who would have been absent due to pre-planned ops or treatments, etc., weren't. But the NHS is obviously working through that backlog now, so there will be an increase in people who will be absent due to things that have been delayed during the pandemic. We continue to work with our sickness absence management policy, and clearly now that we're returning to sort of a more normal state, then we would expect that whilst those numbers may go up for a couple of years due to the reasons that we've just explained, that we will be able to manage that and that it will start on a downward trend again. In terms of turnover, I think the first thing to say about turnover is that turnover is not always a bad thing in and of itself. We do need, any organisation needs some degree of turnover or churn, otherwise things become very stale, things become very samey. You don't want the same people doing the same thing in the same way for year after year after year, or you never see any change or any improvement. And turnover is a good thing where people are moving on because they've been supported and developed by the organisation to be able to go to a role somewhere else, which is a promotion or a career development grade for them. And it gives younger people the opportunity to come into the organisation, and so you get fresh ideas, fresh energy, etc. So turnover in itself is not a bad thing. Again, our turnover rates tend to be, you'll see from 4.7, our turnover rates tend to be below the national average. We do have pockets that Julian identified, and where turnover is a bad thing is where you have difficulty recruiting to replace the people who have left. And we're finding that in, as it says there, grades 4 and below, and certain pockets such as catering and cleaning where it's difficult to recruit. We also find actually in some of the higher graded posts and some of the professional areas that the marketplace for those specialisms has changed. And there are opportunities now for people to access jobs in other areas which they would not necessarily up sticks and move home to do, but if they don't need to do that, then those become available. And I know of a number of cases where members of staff have gone on a career progression to a bigger and better jobs, and you know, that's a sign that we're a good employer, that we've supported and developed those people such that other people want them. The downside to that is, of course, that if you don't have to move house to another part of the country because you can work from where you currently live, then that makes those jobs much more available to you, and that's a change in the marketplace that we will just have to deal with. It will be of benefit to us in some circumstances as well, that we will have people who may want to come and work for us, but would not necessarily have changed where they live to come and work for us, but provided that, or maybe wouldn't have want such an onerous commute, but that Denbighshire may be attractive to them. So we do know where the problems are, we do know where the difficulties are, and there is a plan of how we're going to tackle that. But in the short term, there are some pockets of difficulty in terms of recruitment and retention. In terms of the workforce plan, that's effectively a corporate summary of the work that's done with each service. So each HR business partner will work with their service to look at the workforce profile for that service, any issues that the service has around things like recruitment and retention. And then what the corporate workforce plan does, it tries to bring that all together to give an overview, and then to create an action plan of the things that we think we need to do in order to continue to develop the workforce, in order also to deal with those recruitment and retention difficulties. So, for example, we have an additional recruitment specialist in the HR team now, which is dedicated to social care. There's a group being led by Nicola Stubbins that's looking at recruitment issues within social care, and they'll be working closely with that extra specialist. So those are the sorts of things that we're doing in order to try and tackle some of those things. And clearly, we will continue in accordance with the Chief Exec's 5 principles to ensure that this is a place where staff feel supported, where they can develop themselves and their careers. And, you know, if I can point to 3 or 4 people who've left our service in the last couple of years, and they've gone on to jobs with other organisations, which they wouldn't have been able to do if it hadn't been for the fact that this authority had supported and helped develop them. So, you know, people leaving is not always a bad thing. But as I said, Julian gave a comprehensive introduction. We're happy to answer any questions. As you will have realised already, Louise is the brains of the operation. I'm just the front man. So if there's any particularly difficult question, then I'm sure Louise will be able to deal with it for you.
Diolch yn fawr iawn, Gary. Ma'ch microffon chi efallai rhy agos at eich ceg chi. Mae yna rhyw sŵn yn parablu yn dod.
Oh, wel, dwi'n ymddiheuro am hynny, a na'n trio wneud yn well.
Iawn. Ga i ofyn y cwestiwn cyntaf, gan bod fi eisiau mynd. Na i ofyn yn Saesneg. Dwi wedi gwneud cyfres o gwestiynau, ond falle ddim gallu cael nhw i gyd i mewn. Looking at the report, it seems that there are not many Welsh speakers. Does the data in the report include teachers and other school staff?
Okay, looking at the data in the report, there's 2 sets of data there. So we've given the overall data for Denbighshire, which includes our schools. So that's the 4.4% of employees can speak Welsh at a level 5, so it's a high level. So that's the whole of Denbighshire, including our schools. But then further below, we've given the details of, we've got just under, if we exclude our schools now, we've just got under 20% of employees that class themselves as Welsh speaking to level 3. Bearing in mind as well, from this data, we've got around about 17% of staff that haven't provided us with this information yet, because we do go out and trying to collect the data. So that's where we're up to in terms of our stand of our levels. We are working with the Welsh language strategy to increase all our staffing levels. We want to get all staff within Denbighshire, every staff within Denbighshire, up to the basic level 1. So it is a basic level 1, but we are working with our Welsh strategy colleagues now to try and enable the workforce to reach that level of Welsh language.
Diolch yn fawr. Looking at the screen, and I'll go from left to right. So Peter first, then Geraint, and then Ellie. Over to you, Peter.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks very much for reports. It's very pleasing to see that we are well below the Welsh average with our absence and sicknesses and everything. Looking at the table on 4.5, it's got four down. Although I'm looking at environmental services, that's coming down rather than going up. Bouncing along, thank you. I'll turn the thing off, Chair. Thank you. Yeah, I'm back in. Yeah, very pleasing to see the report that we're well below average in against everything in Wales. And looking at the report on the table on 4.5, there's 4 services up and 4 down, although as I said, looks like highways, facilities and environments. And my chart is actually coming down as 6.95 is below 9.97. There you go. I had one question highlight is depression and anxiety is a problem. Is there any actions being done to improve depression and anxiety within Denbighshire? That's the only question I have, Chair. Thank you.
Louise.
Yeah, just to highlight the data in the chart you just referred to gives us the current data up until the end of December. That was the stats up until December, so we've still got 3 stats to go in that. Can you all hear me? Because everybody's just left my screen.
No, you cracked up a bit there.
Did I? Sorry, you all disappeared then.
Yeah, I can hear you now, but you did break up.
Sorry about that. You all disappeared. See you black. Okay, so the data in that chart, obviously we haven't got the data yet until the end of December, until the end of March. So this data was just up until the end of December. So as you can see, we've still got 3 months worth of data to go in there. So we are expecting it to rise, to increase. In terms of staff, increase in staff with anxiety and depression, the main increase in our sickness absences has been our frontline services. So that's the biggest area we've seen the increase. We have been doing a lot of support with staff because people have been worried about coming into work, some of the frontline services. So this is why we think we've seen an increase in this area. We've had to provide a lot of support, try and provide alternative solutions and things for people. So whereas it has increased, we are managing, supporting, ensuring that, you know, the managers are supporting all absences and making sure where people are experiencing anxiety and depression that we're doing everything we can to support them.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Louise.
Geraint.
Thank you, Mr. Cadeirydd. Can I just echo as well what you said earlier at the beginning of your introduction, the support that we've had over this term as well from officers and staff, and especially these last 2 years. Obviously, it's been a very difficult time, and hopefully we're slowly coming out of it. My question is, only because I've recently gone through this myself, is that obviously Denbighshire offer a phased retirement where you can access your pensions. Is there any figures that show how many staff do that over the term of a year sort of thing, where obviously, and is that then to reduce staffing levels for posts that we no longer need, or do we then require to fill that back that space that's been left, because the majority of staff, I would imagine, go down to 2 or 3 days a week? So that's my question. Thank you.
We do have flexible retirement, and we do, I haven't got the figures in front of me today, but we do have a lot of people that access that. So it's great for for staff that are looking to retire to have a phased retirement into it. So we do have that. I'm sorry, I haven't got the figures today. It's down then to services to determine what they do with those posts. So we, you know, some posts manager will decide to do things in a different way, or they will simply backfill them when people leave. So there's a variety of things that happen with our early flexible retirement, but it is quite popular. You know, people do like taking that offer up.
To Ellie, who's very happy. St. Patrick's Day today. Very happy she is. There you are.
Yeah.
Right. First of all, Appendix 1. I was saddened to read that 4 members of staff had died in service during that report. So very sad reading that. Then I was happy with the workforce plan with the turnover, Louise. So that was good, that we're lower than the national average. But then Appendix 2, page 9, this is me having a fun time reading reports. It states about the amount of councillors, county council elections. I was thinking, had I got this from another report that was on governance yesterday, but it isn't. It says there'll be 47. Well, actually, we'll be having 48 in May, councillors, because Rill South East is being split. So I just thought I'd mention that. And then finally, Appendix 3, the delivery plan. Having brought up, well, you know, me and my husband bringing up daughters going to uni and things, I think the number of graduate placements should increase. Okay, and I thought, I didn't know, I thought, well, I'll mention it because I think, you know, even they go to get a degree in Colwyn Bay, they've got a degree. So yes, we do need to use our graduates. Okay, so it wasn't a question, but I think really and truthfully, it's something that needs to be done. Thank you. And thank you all again, everybody during the last 5 years.
Councillor Chad, I did, sorry, I know it's 48. It was taken from an earlier document and I forgot to update this document. Really apologies for that.
Right, I got a question here now. I thought of this one. Social services is known as the Cinderella service in many counties, including ours. Is this because of the pandemic been a serious problem for this particular service?
Sorry, can I just come in there? I think the first thing to say to that is that we absolutely don't regard social services as a Cinderella service. If anything, the last 2 years has shown us just how important that service is. And in terms of the difficulties that social care is encountering with recruitment and retention, as I said, we've got now a dedicated resource working to tackle the issues around recruitment and retention with that service. You know, it remains a hugely important service. It's one of the biggest spending areas for the council. It's the service that touches so many people's lives and their families. So it's certainly not regarded as a Cinderella service, and I hope nobody would think that it was regarded as a Cinderella service in Denbighshire. In terms of the details around the work that's being done, Louise may be able to add more, but as I said, there's a working group headed up by Nicola Stubbins that's looking at the recruitment and retention difficulties specifically within social care. And when we recruited, because our recruitment specialist left to take up another role, we were recruiting for that vacancy, and we recruited 2 people instead of 1, so that we could have 1 person who was absolutely dedicated to recruitment and retention within social care. So that's how important, you know, we see it, that it needs a dedicated resource to try and ensure that we're able to provide the support the service needs in terms of recruiting and retaining its staff. And clearly there are national issues, lots of activity around Welsh Government initiatives and proposals in respect of social care, so clearly we'll be keeping an eye on that. Louise may want to add more, but I just thought I'd chip in.
Do you want to come in, Louise?
No, just to back up what Gary said, really, we've actually highlighted the importance of this service, and we've got a programme of work set up, and we've recruited additional resource just to focus solely on this area.
Diolch yn fawr iawn chi, mae'r ateb yna, Gary a Louise, arbennig o ateb da. Mae hwnna'n adran bwysig iawn oddi fewn i'r sir, a dwi'n falch iawn bod chi wedi'n hywiro fi, ond rhaid I fi roi ambell I gwestiwn sydd yn tydu blewyn o'ch trwy'n chi weithiau. Gai nawr ofyn I cynghorydd, a gai groesawu Andrew Thomas yma am y tro ola. Wel chi, croeso Andrew, nice to see you here. And over to Martin now, please.
Thank you, Chairman. First and foremost, can I say that, like everybody else, the last 2 years have been extremely trying for everybody, and the staff, management, HR have all pulled together and done a sterling job. There's no question of that. And I think the other thing too is that this is an excellent report, and I congratulate the officers for bringing these statistics forward. It's good for councillors to understand, the figures. I think sometimes there's a perception of high turnover, and that may be because we've seen a number of senior staff leaving the organisation for various reasons, and this helps to clarify the position for us all as councillors. And Gary, I must admit, Gary, you actually answered most of my questions or my thoughts in your presentation as well. So, as I say, well done to everybody. This is an excellent report, and it gives us confidence for the future. We've no doubt that there are still some challenges on the way, and it's filling those vacancies. And as you rightly say, we're not the only ones in this position. Actually, a positive out of this, as we all know, the troubles in Ukraine at the moment, and we will be seeing a lot of people coming to the United Kingdom from the Ukraine, and perhaps there is something positive that we can do as an authority if people come to live in our area, that we have some jobs that we may be able to offer them, and that that could be good news for us, and there will be skills, I have no doubt, that those people will be bringing to the UK. Just one slight question, and it's not a big issue, but in your reports, I found sometimes that certainly the issues around the types of illnesses, they seem to disappear up and down the columns, and it would have been great if they were all in the same category, on the same lines, and also perhaps by putting things like all the stress and those sort of issues in a grouping, so that we could have an overall picture, because there's a number of types of depression and stress and illnesses and things like that. That would have been good to see them all together. The only other question really is that here we have a report about absences, and the one item that I can't see on there is maternity leave or parental leave. It just as a matter of interest, when you're looking at staffing and when you're looking at the need to bring staff in to cover for maternity leave, etc., it would be good to have those perhaps in a column somewhere in that report, just to give us a flavour of how many staff we do have on maternity leave and also paternity leave. Not being sexist, we're all allowed to take that time off these days, although I'm not planning on anything at the moment, I hasten to add, in that area. But it would be good to have those to understand, especially as we have a high percentage of female employees, and of course, that could impact on, again, our staffing levels. So that's my only comments really, and an observation that perhaps we could add those figures in next time round. But thanks to everybody.
You want to come back, Louise or Gary?
Thank you for that, Councillor Holland. I've made those notes, and I'll take that on board next time we bring a report through.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. Whenever we think about absence, we just think about sickness. And actually, there are other reasons, really positive and happy reasons for people as to why they're absent. So, yeah.
Wel, diolch yn fawr iawn. Pethau'n mynd dda iawn. A mae gennym ni un person o tu allan i'r Pwyllgor, un o'r mwyaf profiadol sydd gennym ni, yn cynrychioli canol y Ddinbych. Croeso arbennig I Gwyneth Censler. Cwestiwn gen i.
Diolch yn fawr iawn, garedig iawn. Un o'r gwahaniaethau dwi wedi gweld dros y blynyddoedd ers I mi ddechrau 70 ar 20 mlynedd yn ôl. Yn y gorffennol, o'n i'n gwybod pwy oedd yn gadael a weithiau byswn ni'n ymuno a parti gadael iddyn nhw, neu gwybod pwy oedd wedi marw, neu graig, neu gwrwyn wedi marw. A dwi'n teimlo rwan pan ni'n clywed, o na, mae o wedi gadael, mae o wedi, ers chydig o fisoedd neu beth bynnag, a da ni ddim yn cael cyfle i gyrru cerdyn neu jyst dymuno y gorau iddyn nhw. Sut fedrwn ni gwella y perthynas rhwng cynghorwyr a'r staff?
Diolch, Gwyneth.
Na I ateb os fedrai, Mr Cadeirydd. I think the issue there is that I think there's been, to a certain extent, over the last 2 years especially, people haven't been present, members and officers haven't been in the same building, etc. In terms of letting members know when certain officers leave, I think we probably would think that would be a matter for the service. It would be difficult for us to send something round every time somebody left, and clearly when people pass away or they're seriously ill, there are data protection issues in respect of what we're allowed to share and what we should share in respect of that. But it's something we can look at and maybe discuss with services as to whether or not there will be some officers who there'll be many officers that you don't know, that you won't come into contact with, and it's difficult for us to know who, if you like, is leaving that members would like to know about, etc. So I think that's probably a judgment in individual circumstances for services to make. I think it would be difficult for us to have some sort of overarching corporate thing where we were picking up a notice out to members every time somebody left. So it's probably best done locally.
Yes, I understand. It's just that there are advantages with hybrid working and working from home, but I think this is one of the disadvantages, is this relationship between officers and councillors, because we are working in partnership.
Yeah.
And it's helpful if we know, oh, so-and-so's wife's just died, and so that we don't put any pressure on that, or something like that. But that's one of the negatives, I think.
No, yes, I think, and clearly one of Graham's principles is, really good member-officer relationships and good working relationships between members and officers. And it's one of the things that we will be focusing on in the induction for new members after the election, as to, how that relationship should work. But in terms of some of those sort of personal things about people, then we just need to be careful that we've got consent before we start sharing that sort of information. And clearly, there will be, hopefully, when we're not in any further restrictions going forward and things start, continue to open up, then there will be more people in the office. Some of that will definitely be coming back.
Ail cwestiwn, Mr Cadeirydd, os fedrai, os gwelwch yn dda, exit interviews, are these carried out regularly? Do we have a percentage of how many undergo exit interviews?
I'll defer to Louise on the numbers, but everybody who leaves is offered an exit interview. But they're not compulsory. We can't make people come to an exit interview, and it's up to the individual whether they want to take advantage of that or not. But yes, everybody is offered an exit interview, and we do take note of the information that's provided in there. But in terms of numbers, I'm not sure if Louise has got the numbers with her today, but we can certainly provide numbers in respect of exit interviews.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, I haven't got the figures in front of me at the moment, but we can provide them. We just do try to promote it as much as possible. Some people do take us up on it and others don't. So we do, as part of the leaving process, try to encourage people to carry out exit interviews.
Thank you for the offer, Louise. So we look forward to receiving those data from you. Diolch yn fawr. Thinking of this pandemic, it has affected everyone, staff. Has it been in any way an advantage? You know, different sections having to work together. I'm thinking of Tony's ward section, or possibly Nicholas Stubbins and down in social services. Has it been in any way advantageous to us?
If I may, I think broadly the pandemic's not been an advantage, but certainly we have moved on in the way that we work and are being able to take advantage of some of the technological and other advances probably much more quickly than we would otherwise have done. If we think just about things like remote attendance, about business travel, carbon reduction, there are things that we were probably already on the way to as a country and as a sector. But I suppose if I think about things like remote attendance for meetings, people, not just member meetings, but people working virtually on things like Zoom and Teams and stuff like that, we would have been wanting to encourage people to do those things. I know Welsh Government was encouraging council to move along that way. And if I'm honest, I think pre-pandemic, people were always looking at, well, what are the difficulties? What are the obstacles? Whereas we had to do it, didn't we? There was no other way of conducting our business. And so we've probably moved on a number of years in the 2-year period that we've been working in this way. We've probably got the technology working much more quickly than we would have done if we'd been just sort of not having to do it, but just wanting to do it. So there are advantages. I think for staff, there will be people who don't like working from home, and there will be people who love it, and there will be people who want a happy mix and a happy balance. And what we want to get to is that happy balance where people are working in a way that's as flexible as possible for them, but also meets the needs of the business. In many ways, anecdotally, I talk to people who feel that they're more productive working in this way because they have less distraction, but they miss the social interaction with their colleagues. And what we need to get back to is that happy blend. But in terms of things like people spending time traveling between Ruthin and Denbigh and Rhyl, if I just think of my own experience, I might have a meeting in Ruthin in the morning, I may need to be in Rhyl in the afternoon. Well, the time I'm in the car is dead time in terms of productivity. I mean, okay, I get to listen to the radio on my way between meetings, but I'm not actually necessarily doing anything. Whereas I think we probably pack much more into a day than we used to. So there are advantages. The downsides are that we just need to be careful that we're managing people's well-being. And what you want to make sure is that people are working from home in a way that suits them, suits the job, is something that's positive in terms of the outcomes. We don't want people to feel that they're living at work. So I think in terms of the advances we've made in being able to work virtually, I think those have been very positive. I think we do miss something with some of the face-to-face activity that people need in terms of team building and team morale, etc., and that sort of thing. And there's been lots of innovative things that people have been doing to try and replicate that virtually, with sort of drop-in times in their diary where teams will get together for a short period just to have that little bit of social intercourse that they would have had in the office whilst they were making a cup of tea or moving from one place to the other, which is important. You know, it builds relationships and it helps the day move along. So there are some positives, but what we need to do is to make sure that as we move forward, we harness the positives from it and make sure that we give people the opportunity to work in a way that suits them and suits the role.
Gary, Tony Ward eisiau ddod mewn yma, dwi'n meddwl. Do you want to come in, Tony?
Yeah, thanks, Arwell. I mean, I'd lowered my hand just at the last minute because Gary literally just said exactly what I was going to say. But I think it's about, the strides that we've had to make in terms of flexible working over the last couple of years, because it was forced upon us, could be looked at ultimately as an advantage, I think, when we look back at this, because it would have taken us a number of years to have made the changes that we've had to make over a very short period of time. I think the trouble is that we've probably gone beyond where we would have liked to have ultimately ended up. So now it's a matter of reining things back a little bit and finding that right balance, as Gary said. But yeah, we have to look at it as a positive, because it would have taken us a very long time to have made those changes. But in terms of productivity, I probably used to drive to Llandrindod Wells once a month before the pandemic, and Gary's the same. Lots of us did it. Despite our protests, there was a general view that, those meetings wouldn't work online, so everybody had to go and attend in person those national meetings. Well, it soon became clear that actually they work very well, and we will never go back to that situation where we're driving to Llandrindod Wells or Bilth Wells every month to have a 2-hour meeting and then drive back again. It seems crazy now, thinking back to how we used to work. So those benefits we will retain, and I think that has to be seen as a positive.
Diolch yn fawr. Can I ask your patience with me now, because I'm going to ask Hugh Irving to take over, but I have to take my machine home with me. Diolch yn fawr iawn I chi gyd am eich cydweithrediad, and da ni'n gobeithio mi welwn ni'n gilydd eto, un ai ddim yn y cyngor neu tu allan i'r cyngor. Gai ddiolch i'r holl bobl sydd wedi cydweithio ar y pwyllgor yma hefo ni, ac fydd wraig rwan yn edrych ymlaen I fi chario hi ymlaen I fynd I weld arbenigwr ar y llygaid. Diolch yn fawr iawn I chi gyd. Diolch.
All right. Thank you.
Good morning. Good morning, everybody. Sorry, just trying to get back into the drift. We're on this subject of the remote working. Tony's just followed. Are there more questions on that subject, please? Yes, I see Martin Holland and somebody beside him, but there's a shadow over the screen. Gwyneth, sorry, yeah, see now. Yeah. Martin, please.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Actually, this is something that I have been, thinking about quite seriously in relation to working from home, etc. In my past life, can I just say that I used to travel to Bristol once a week, 7 hours in the car for a 2-hour meeting. And, and I used to think, how unproductive is that? Because, and in those days, I'm going back a few years, of course, you couldn't hold conferences in the cars or things like that, although I must admit I'm not totally in favour of that for road safety reasons. But, that was an awful lot of time, and also an impact on the environment as well, because travelling up and down like that, and as a county, we should obviously be encouraging those, less of those long hauls, and staff will therefore be more productive. The other thing too, though, and I think you've all mentioned it, Gary said, it's all about a flexible and a good mix and a balance of working from home and also working, in the office, because I have also concerns about things like how do you train new entrants? You know, if they're not sitting next to experienced staff and able to talk to them and ask them questions, if they're working from home, that's not a good environment for that. And also, it's all about feeling you're part of the company, as in my case it used to be, but also in this case being part of Ddinbyshire. And how do you relate to it if actually you're just working from home all the time? And I think that's also important. And I think my personal view is that we could also see a greater turnover of staff when as they feel they're no longer part of a particular organisation. They're just working from home, doing the job, and therefore they could work from home and do that job for anybody else. So I think it's all about a balance, a good mix. And I think there are bonuses of working from home. And you can be more productive in some cases. But as a councillor, can I also say though, I think we've lost a lot in the last 2 years. The meetings, okay, they're all on Zoom, and I've joked about the fact that I wear my slippers to all council meeting these days. I'm losing my thought now, councillors themselves, part of our process is interaction. And that cup of coffee, and we only have one, I hasten to add, that cup of coffee in the middle of a meeting or before a meeting is a great time to talk to other councillors. And I think that we sadly have lost a lot of that. So I just make that point as well. But yeah, pluses and minuses in this, and it's getting the balance right. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Willis, I think. Yes.
Diolch yn fawr iawn. Two things from what Gary was saying about and Tony, in a way, the dead time driving, and I certainly agree that if you can have meetings via Zoom or whatever it is instead of going to Cardiff or whatever, that's good. But there can be some positives in having that little drive home when you can listen to Mahler or Beethoven or Mozart and just relax and have that break between your work environment and your home environment. But my second point, and I think this is important, is it making us work more in silos? Let's take planning. So officers could say, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? But there is a danger of working more in silos, I think. Dyna ni, diolch.
Thank you. Does any of the officers want to comment on that, please?
I think if I just deal with the points that Martin made first, I'll move on to Gwyneth. So in terms of new starters, yes, that's that's definitely an issue. And again, during the pandemic, we've been working in a strange environment. We have had new starters. We've had new starters in my service, and we have managed to induct them. And even during the pandemic, if there was an absolute need to go into the office to do something, then we were still able to do that. And so we have been doing that. I think where people will have lost out if they're new entrants is the stuff you pick up by osmosis. So it's the things that you don't need to ask somebody because you heard somebody do it 20 minutes earlier and you picked it up without having to ask. There's those sorts of things, but that's about making sure that we recognize that, making sure that managers have got the tools and the skills to say, well, actually, we do need to spend some time together doing stuff. And going forward, that will be, there is no intention that people will work at home every day. There's no intention that, or be required to. There's no intention that people will be required to do that. It's all about finding a balance. So we've got staff who will be in with new starters to induct them and to meet up with them, to have a one-to-one, etc. We have had people doing that in creative ways, where not able to come into the office. They've had a walking meeting to check up on staff. We've got a very good tool in the Jabber system where people don't have to send formal emails to each other. They can just message each other. They can make a quick call on that thing over the laptop. So we do encourage everybody to keep in touch and to be able to replicate as much of that. Going forward, we'll be saying to people that, you know, we want you to work as flexibly as is suitable for you and is suitable for your role, but there will be some times when we'll actually require you to be it. If there's a team event, we will require you to be there. You need to be at that, because that connection with not just the authority, but with that close network of colleagues that you work with is really important. And it's about doing that in some of the same ways we did previously with face-to-face engagement, but also making sure that people are using all the tools they've got to be able to keep in touch with people. And we've had services who've been having keep in touch time during the day so that people can just drop in on a virtual meeting and have a chat with somebody and a cup of tea. Just anecdotally, nothing to do with the council, but my son works for a company where they always used to go for a drink on a Friday after work. Well, they replicated that. They would have a Zoom catch up and everybody would have a drink at the table and they just have a chat. It's that sort of thing that people need to be continuing to do, and hopefully we'll be able to do more of that face-to-face, that team building stuff as we go forward. In terms of member meetings, I know, I recognise, Martin, that, you know, lots of conversations used to go on in the corridor between members before meetings or during breaks in meetings, and clearly what we're intending to do with member meetings is that members will attend the meeting from the place of their choice. So if you choose to come in, then you can come into the meeting. If you choose to attend it from somewhere else because your circumstances with work or family responsibilities or whatever mean that you can't get in on that day, then you can attend from there. So it will be for members to make that choice. The law does not allow us to require all members to come in for a physical meeting. Everybody's to be able to attend from wherever. In terms of Gwyneth's point, yes, it is about getting the balance right. As I said, some people will find that working from home just really suits them, or it suits certain bits of their job where they need some peace and quiet to be able to go away and do stuff. And there will be people who struggle with that, or they may find that their accommodation isn't appropriate, where they live isn't appropriate for them to be able to do that. And it's about making sure that we've got the right environment for people, both in the office or at home, to do the bits of the job that they need to be able to do. In terms of silos, silos is a dirty word. You know, we work hard on that. I think Tony would say, as a senior leadership team, you know, people are very conscious of making sure that they keep those connections across services, and we've got a number of people who work across services to deliver stuff. And you know, one of the key principles of Graham's approach again is this sort of one council approach. The answer to lots of things does not lie within a single service, and it needs a number of people across the organisation to be able to work together to deliver that. And as I said, the virtual way of working in some ways is more conducive to that. You know, if you want to have a quick chat with somebody face to face who would normally work in another town to the place where you work, well, it's quite easy now just to get in touch with them on one of these platforms and be able to have that sort of interaction. You know, you don't have to use this for a formal meeting. You can have a quick 10-minute catch up with somebody on Teams or Zoom, etc. So those are the sorts of things that we'll be looking to emphasize as we go forward.
Do I see any other questions there?
I think Tony's got his hand up, Chair.
Yeah, Tony, what? Yeah.
Yeah, so Chair, once again, I've realised that Gary's basically said exactly what I was going to say. But I think, you know, just so that I genuinely do think that actually the way that we're working currently and the way we'll work in future may actually prevent silo working rather than lead to it. As Gary said, you know, beforehand, unless you were actually physically working in the same building with somebody, you wouldn't really see them or speak to them. I genuinely think that we're all talking to each other a lot more, actually, cross-service and cross-team now than we were 2 years ago, because we're using Teams all the time to have quick conversations, quick meetings with other people in other teams and services. So I actually don't think that silo working will happen as a consequence of this. But I also do think that people are going to start using offices for different things in future. So there is obviously a danger that people could feel isolated and don't feel part of a team. And I think, you know, some people will choose to come into an office just to do emails or write reports all day because they're more comfortable being in an office or it's more conducive for them. Other people will be more productive at home. And if they've got that kind of work to do, will choose to do it from home. But I think what teams will do, and this will be on a team by team basis and it will evolve over time. But I believe that teams will start to work differently, and what they'll probably do is actually agree, well, on 1 day a week or 2 days a week, we might all come into the office and therefore we can all do things together. And it won't be that they're just going to come in for the sake of it and sit down and read emails and write reports. They might be doing something very different, working together creatively, team building, you know, problem solving, that kind of thing. So we might end up in a when we come to an office for very different purposes. So again, I think we have to look at it as a positive, and we need to make sure that we build on those opportunities and that people do feel part of a team. I do think we can achieve it.
On the Java system, I suppose, or whatever system you have, I presume it's monitoring people's work activity, is it? Does that make sense? That we know who people are and what they're doing and when they're doing it.
No, Jabber is a communication system. So effectively, it means that people can send each other messages, sort of an instant messenger, and it might be, are you free for a quick chat for 5 minutes? And someone will send you a thumbs up back, and then you can just ring them straight on the system, rather than having to try and phone somebody. It's actually better because you get less interruptions from, I don't know if Tony would agree with this, but whereas people used to phone me, now they'll send me a quick jabber to say, are you free for a phone call? And you can say, well, can you give me 10 minutes or yes, and you can phone them back straight away. So I think it probably manages those sort of interactions, but you can drop someone a quick message to ask them just to, you know, I've just sent you an email, can you have a quick look at it? And the reason for that is that that message pops up on their screen straight away. Whereas you might send them an email, they might be in a meeting, they might not be looking at their emails, but they'll get that quick message which will remind them to go and look at the thing you've asked them to look at. Or you might be, I'm giving away the tricks of the trade now, Hugh, but I might be in a meeting and a member might ask me a particularly difficult question, and I will be furiously jabbering away to people to give me the answer, and then I can look at least halfway competent by giving you the answer and pretending I thought of it myself. So that I shouldn't give away those tricks now. That's against the officer code. But that means of communication means that we've got a really good informal way of people being able to replicate a chat. So you can have a chat with someone as if you were over a cup of coffee whilst getting on with your work, because those messages just pop up and down on your screen. So that's what Jabber does.
I think perhaps what I was also grasp is there somewhere in the mechanism of the management of all this process that tells line managers or team leaders or whatever where their team are and what they're doing and when they're doing it?
Well, just on Jabber has a color coding system which will tell you whether someone's in a meeting, whether they're on a call, whether they're offline, whether they're available, whether they've got a do not disturb on because they're getting on with a particular piece of work. We are looking to increasingly equip managers with the skills they need to be able to manage people remotely, because it takes a slightly different approach to be able to do that. But as well, with regular one-to-ones, people have got their clear objectives that they're to get on with, and we can measure the output. We see what people are doing. And I think the really important thing with this way of working is that we judge people by what they do, not what time they're sitting at their computer to do it. And I think the workforce has responded really well to way of working. So for example, during the sort of darkest days of the pandemic where people were homeschooling, we'd have staff who would be just sending messages to say, you know, they were sharing those responsibilities with their partner, if they had one, and it would be, I'm going to be working these blocks of hours today because my wife or partner or husband is going to be looking after the kids at this time. And then they'd be doing a couple of hours in the evening to make up for the hours that they hadn't done during the day. And that's really important that we've got people who want to deliver good work. They've got pride in their own performance, but also there is an organization, we're giving them that space to be able to look after their families and deliver the work to a standard that they want to do. And I think the overall thing about this flexible working and working in sort of innovative ways is that if we have recruitment and retention difficulties, we're going to have to be offering people the opportunity to work in a way that's flexible for them, that suits their family circumstances, that suits us as an organization, because every other employer is doing it. And if we were to insist that everybody came into the office 9 to 5, 5 days a week, or if we were to insist that everybody worked from home 5 days a week, we wouldn't be offering people that flexibility, and we'd be less attractive in the marketplace for people when they were looking for a place to do their work. So it's clearly a retention and recruitment tool as well, to be able to show people that they can have a really good work-life balance if they want to come and work for Denbighshire.
Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Chair. We digress a little, actually, digress from what the subject we're following here. But when silos is mentioned, of course, it's one of my pet hates is working in silos. And Tony's right. There's an old BT advert that used to say it's good to talk, isn't it? And to break down those silos. But ultimately, the only way we will really get to grips with working in silos is when our processes that we're working to ask the question each time, if I take this course of action, what will be the knock-on effect on other departments and other teams? And when we look at our processes and redesign them to build that question in, then we will truly break down the silos, and actually we'll save ourselves a lot of money when we actually work together and identify things that will impact on others, you know, rather than finding out later that it's happened. But so that's just my final comment on the silos for the day. But thanks very much again.
Thank you. Thank you. So I'm just saying goodbye to the Conway representatives who's just leaving us. Goodbye, ladies. Nice to see you. Good. Are there anybody else got any points to ask there on this subject? I take it we've got a monitoring team somewhere watching how this is all evolving and working, and maybe tweaking it as we go along. Would that be something at head of service level, would it, or something of that nature?
Sorry, I know Tony's got his hand up, Chair. I don't know if you want me to answer that or whether you want Tony to come in first, but
now, yes, Tony, yeah.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, go on, Gary. Mine was just really on the point of silos that Martin
you go ahead
raised,
and I'll deal with the question after.
Okay. I was just going to say, in response to Martin's comment, just to assure the committee that what you have is a senior leadership team which is very much focused on ensuring that silo working doesn't happen. You know, we're really conscious of it and actually actively working against making sure that doesn't happen. And you know, I think it's probably the closest group that we've had as an SLT for a very long time, and I think that does permeate down, you know, to the middle manager level as well. It's actually quite a tight-knit group, and you know, people genuinely are trying to work together. So I think we've got the right people and the right structures in place to safeguard against silo working, and I'm confident that that we're making a good job of that and will continue to do so.
Good, thank you. Right, I can't see anybody else with a hand raised. I had a question that I was trying to catch the chairman's eye over, but I couldn't quite catch him at the time. But it was just very quickly with the exit interviews. I take it we it isn't just a tick box operation. We actually study what's said in them and see if there's any actions need to be taken, or see if there's any common themes over exits.
Yes, Chair, we do. We monitor the data that we get back in, and it is more than a tick box exercise. We do look at some of the responses, because we do get, there's quite a few free text boxes in there to go off the tick boxes and give us any of their opinions, and that is monitored. If there are any concerns that are monitored on a monthly basis, head service.
Just lost you. I think you were just reassuring me. I think.
I think what Louise was about to say, because I caught part of it, was that we monitor that feedback, and also the relevant head of service gets to see that feedback as well, so that they understand what's come out of an exit interview.
Because sometimes if people are leaving a company or an organisation, as I recollect, sometimes you think, hang on a minute, what's going on in that area, isn't it?
Yeah. So
source of information.
Yeah, so I don't know if you picked all of it up, but what Louise was saying was that there's a form to record those exit interviews, and there are free text boxes where people can express their opinions or their views.
Yeah.
HR monitor that, and where those comments are made, then there is feedback given to the relevant head of service about the issues that may have been raised. And yes, somebody is keeping an eye on that to see if there are any themes, etc.
Possibly like bullying that's not been picked up, or that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Which can result in resignations. Fine, thank you. I don't see any more questions, but please, anybody, if I've ignored you, can you please shout out? Silence. So I'm going to take you, I think, if anybody wants to correct me, to the recommendations, please. Somebody going to move the recommendations?
I will. Yeah.
Ellie, yeah, right.
Yeah.
We consider and discuss the absence and turnover along with associated documentation, and determine if any further monitoring of staff absence and turnover rates are required. Are you happy we've covered that aspect?
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Okay. And is that second?
Mr. Chairman, I think perhaps, we haven't had a full year for this year, so it would be good at some stage, not soon, but perhaps, towards the end of this year again, or beginning of next year, that you look at these figures again, and also the recommendation that we include things like maternity leave and paternity leave figures in there as well. Thank you.
This is an annual report? I think I've seen this before.
It's not an annual report, or Freanne will correct me, but it's not an annual report that comes to scrutiny, but we do monitor these figures and we do keep them. And of course, there's nothing to prevent us providing an annual report for information for members. It doesn't necessarily have to come onto an agenda unless there's anything in there that members think, oh, we'd like to discuss that.
Something for scrutiny chair and vice chairs, really.
Yeah, we could just produce an information report every year, and then if there were any items in there that caused members to feel that there were issues they'd like to probe further, then it could go onto an agenda. I don't know if Freanne would be happy with that.
Would that work, Rian?
Yeah, I think it would. It may be worthwhile for you to have perhaps like a report at the end of the 22-23 year now. Then you could have the full year then, couldn't you? Perhaps that be circulated to scrutiny chairs, and they could identify anything from that report that they might think it merits coming to a committee.
Yeah. So if we build that into the recommendations, is that okay, members? Yep, fine. So in other words, there'll be an annual report to scrutiny chairs and vice chairs. If they see anything in it that they think might attract a little bit more deeper discussion, they can then take it to the relevant scrutiny committee. Is everybody comfortable about that? Yep, fine. Okay, we'll build that into it then. Thank you very much. That was a very comprehensive report, and it's stimulated quite a lot of debate, so I think it's been a good exercise. Can we move now to item 6, which is the scrutiny work programme, please? I think there's a report there from Rian.
Yes, thank you very much for that. Now, I'll add that last one to the scrutiny chairs and vice chairs group forward work programme. That's not going to be a problem at all. Now, this is your your usual report, but a bit unusual in a way because it's your last report of this term. So there's not a lot to report on it really. What will happen now, that forward work programme you've got in Appendix 1, if you're happy with that as it stands, it'll be transferred over to your successor committee post the elections. And then they'll go through it and determine if they're happy with what's on there and if they need to move anything around or anything. Now, you will notice that the committee's first meeting of the next term is on the 9th of June. And it already has 3 items there which have to go at that time of year. So we provisionally blocked that off for those reports, but pre that meeting, earlier that morning, there'll be a short just training session for committee members on performance and risk management, including the Wellbeing and Future Generations Act. It'll probably be useful for them to have that short session before they go in and look at those specific reports that they've got listed. So if you're happy with that, that's fine.
I think that'll be very valuable because I'm sure there will be new members that will need to familiarise themselves and get up to speed with exactly what goes on in scrutiny. Fine, thank you. So there's recommendations committee that we consider the information provided and approve, revise or amend the forward work programme as deemed appropriate, determine whether any key messages or themes from the current meeting should be publicised by the press and social media.
Before you go on to that, just a couple of other things.
Yes.
I know we're going into the pre-election period now, but if you do have a subject that you think would merit scrutiny in the next council, please fill one of those forms in and send it in until that group of the scrutiny chairs meets in June. I can circulate it to the current group of chairs for their views on any requests and to see if it needs to provisionally go in. So just on that point. And also in, the Cabinet's forward work programme is in Appendix 3 and Appendix 4. It's the latest on your recommendations from the last meeting. And just for information purposes, the Q3 performance report on the corporate plan is in the information brief I circulated to you the other day.
Yeah.
I think that's it.
That's really, I think.
Yeah. Just one question, Chair. Since 2018, Rian, we've been asking about a visit to the Cavendish healthcare. And I mean, I know I went for a job interview there and I thought it was quite fascinating. And I really truthfully feel that this committee should have had the visit. I know for the last 2 years, we haven't been able to, but could it be something that we could try and do for the new members in the new council? Just a question, because I know Hugh, I think Hugh, you visited, haven't you?
Yes.
Yes.
We used to have, like we are doing with the Queen's Building Project, we used to have a Cavendish board, for want of a better word, the decision-making body, but we met at the factory every so often. So it was sort of a scrutiny body. That was abolished by the former head of service. So really, since then, members haven't really had an input into what goes on in the Cavendish operation. I was on that board for some years until it was discontinued, and I found it fascinating. I found it amazing that what we were doing down there, and I would thoroughly support a visit by members, and I think I've actually asked for it.
Yeah.
Because of COVID.
And that's why I brought it up, Hugh. All right. Okay.
During the course of this council, there has been a visit to Cavendish, and I think they had to manage it only so many members per visit. It was a whole day. I can't remember off the top of my head how many members did visit, but quite a few did, because I think there was a morning slot and an afternoon slot. There was probably a maximum of 7 per visit. They had hoped to run another one, but of course COVID struck. But if you do look at your forward work programme, on the 24th of November, there is a report there on Cavendish listed. So it may be something that you want to raise with them then. By that time, new members will be more familiar with their roles, and they'll probably ask themselves anyway by then.
Yeah.
It's a Cavendish.
Would you be happy about that, Ellie?
Yes, I would. because I can't remember why I didn't go. And I mean, as Jeanette says to me, I go and visit anything. So I just can't understand why I didn't go. It must have been something serious, must have been. So yeah, I would be very happy.
Yeah, good. The regular report to scrutiny came out of the fact that I protested that there wasn't a board anymore. So there was no way that members other than lead members were getting any insight about what was happening there. So then we've had the annual report to members instituted when the factory manager and chief administrator and the head of service come along and give us an overview of their activities for the year. So yes, I would very much support the fact that we then follow that up with the opportunity for members to go and have a walk around the factory, because it's I don't know much about factories, because I was always a retailer in my working life, except when I went to the odd clothing factory. So it was very interesting for me to see how things are made and produced and planned. Yeah, so good. Yeah, fine. Okay, we'll include that then, Rhiannon, if that's all right. So are you happy about the is there anything else, Rhiannon, no, if you're happy about the recommendations for the Forward Work Programme, members, everybody in favour of that? Fine, thank you very much. So I'm just juggling around, right? And so the final item on the agenda is there any feedback from committee representatives who sit representing performance scrutiny on the various council boards and groups? I'd just kick that off by saying I represent scrutiny. It's actually scrutiny chairs and vice chairs, I think, but I represent them on the Queen's Building Project Board. And I think we're meeting again this week, I think, aren't we, Rodri? I think, aren't we? Oh, no, it's not you, is it? Sorry, it's somebody else. I think we're meeting again this week, but the project proceeds, as you know, and I think the Cabinet have just approved the next phase of the project earlier this week. Are there any other reports that scrutiny members want to bring? Peter Scott?
I'll turn my screen off again in case it go off. The report on the flood risk management and riparian land ownership the task and finish group went to community scrutiny on the 10th of I think it was March. I think that went down very well. It was a good job, a good task and finish group, and we hope we keep having annual meetings to keep that group going forward, Chair. Thank you.
Good. Fine. No other reports. So I think if I've got everything right, thank you very much for your attendance, everybody. Thank you, officers. That will bring this meeting to a conclusion. So it's the last meeting of performance scrutiny in this 5-year term of the council. It's been a pleasure to be the vice chairman, though I was the acting chairman for quite a while, sadly, when Councillor Hugh was in hospital. And we'll look forward, hopefully, to those of us that wish to do so, meeting in the future. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. See you all again, kids.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, officers.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye now. Thank you all.